Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast. This week, Saf talks to Dr Richard Fallon about how to bring people together. They talk about their experiences with networking and how it's so much more than people selling to each other. So, let's join the conversation.
Hello and welcome to another Canny Conversation. These are our business conversations with a cause. Conversations that we will hope will captivate your curiosity cannily. And this afternoon we've got, today we've got with us Safaraz Ali, as always. Saf, good to see you.
Always good to see you, Adrian.
Oh, he's a flatterer.
Good to see you, sir.
Look, we've also got a guest with us today, and it's somebody that Saf and I have known for perhaps more years than we care to admit, although he was only a baby when we first met him. Dr Richard Fallon. We've got listeners all over the country. We've got listeners in Germany, we've got listeners in the Far East and in the States. So there just might be somebody in this wicked world that doesn't know Richard, but there won't be many of them. But given the fact that in some deepest part of some jungle there just might be somebody for whom the name is not familiar. A scientist, marketeer, all-round good egg. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, Richard, before we start.
Hi, Adrian. As always, a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Richard Fallon, often known as the guy with the laugh. The laugh, if they don't know who I am, you might recognise me by the laugh.
Yeah.
I've had a somewhat interesting kind of career, to say the least. My PhD is from Aston University in laser physics, and my work appeared on Tomorrow as well, back in 1999, if you remember that. Because I worked on a master. It was for a master of yacht, and I put a optical fibre sensor into that, so it could sense strain. So that was good. That was good. But I literally worked, Saf, in an underground lab on my own for 3 years. I saw neither daylight or people, and I like both those things. So I moved on from there to work for British Airways as a business analyst for 4 years, and then I moved back to Birmingham to work at Empire for 2 years. Set my own business 2004, which is about the time I met Adrian, which back in the day now, really, wasn't it?
That was at a playgroup, wasn't it, Richard?
That's right. Yeah. That was that after-school club, wasn't it, Adrian?
Yeah.
You met that. And I was doing at the time, I'd set up a consultancy. We did a lot of help management consultancy work. And in 2009, everybody said, we need help with marketing. So I became the marketing engineer, found I really enjoy marketing, got into that, started marketing universities with the technology supply chain. It's kind of gone on from that. But I really like people, I really like technology, and I really like marketing, and I love networking.
Wow.
I absolutely love networking. I love people like you guys. See?
Fantastic.
Good.
There you go.
How did you meet Richard, Seth?
I originally, we online really. Richard was prolific in terms of social media. He was very good in terms of his copy. He used to get these emails, and they were really engaging emails. And sometimes you get emails, and you don't bother and so forth. And you're reading an email, and it actually gets you in. And I was looking forward to these emails, and the emails were like really well written, and it's like a sales copy, and not everybody can write that way. And I thought, this is interesting. Who is this chap? So I started following on social media. I started engaging, and then Richard started doing some events as well, some specialist events. So I came to an event and so forth, and then we found out the fact that we've got quite a few people in common, quite a few connections and so forth, and obviously that relationship has evolved. And for the last 2-3 years, I've been knocking on Richard's door to try and get me into the St Paul's Club, which at the moment they've put on hold on. But that's that. So there's a multi-dimensional, multi-sort of relationship, and we've also worked with Richard's consultancy company as well as the technology supply chain, and put ourselves through one of the programs, which is a unique relationship. And I've also come to Richard for contacts. He's referred me to many many people, so quite a lot of referrals. So well connected, a lot of contacts, and
so what we're saying, Saf, is he's talented, he's positive, he's cheerful, he's well connected.
Absolutely.
Somebody you could very easily get to dislike, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I always start every talk I've ever given Adrian by always saying, look, but I'll start with an apology. At the end of this year, you're going to say, Richard Fallon seems like a nice guy, like what I have to say. Or you're going to walk out going, I hate that Richard Fallon. I'd actually walk into oncoming traffic rather than risk a conversation if he was on the street.
Yeah.
So, and it's true, people split one way or the other. A lot of people say, you're far too loud, your laugh's too loud. It's like, we don't like that. Okay, I'm not a friend with it.
And it always looks so stylish as well.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to talk in this session about networking, a topic which Safaraz and Richard are both very well informed. They've been doing a lot of it for a very, very long time. So let's begin by asking Saf and then Richard, what were your first experiences of networking? How did you first get involved in networking in terms of, trying to promote businesses and link people together?
Yeah. For me personally, it was 2004, 2005. And I think I did it the wrong way now. I will relook at how I did things. And I was a mortgage broker, finance broker, and I went to become self-employed. And as part of that, I thought I need to go out there and find clients and join various networking groups and attend events, both predominantly face-to-face. I mean, online wasn't that prolific at the time in terms of online stuff. There was an online networking platform called Academy that was part of it. Was prior to LinkedIn and so forth. So it's part of the Academy sort of community, and they called themselves a community, and I felt part of that community, part engaged with that community, and I thought that was brilliant. But for me, it was about my mortgage broking days, going out and finding customers and so forth, attending events wherever I can, and then my mind changed as well in terms of what networking is. It's not about really selling out there. It's about building trust and building relationships and building being part of a community and getting to know people and now for me it's part of different networks, part of some industry specific, very sort of peers where we talk shop, we share ideas. We're not actually selling to each other, we're just there to share best practice. So it's like a peer network. I know the government's sort of be doing these peer networks now, but we were part of that peer meetups, so it's like peers getting together, discussing best practice, sharing, sort of having quality circles and sharing ideas. And so I've used it in terms of learning. I've used it also in terms of actually going out and talking and speaking or listening to influential people, so motivational people, keynote speakers. So potentially that's a big attraction for me if I know there's somebody out there that I want to listen to. So it feels inspired, and a lot of the time I'm going to events because being with people who are positive minded, have got the right mindset, energizes you, it inspires you, and you wanna, and you come back and you feel that you can do things, and sometimes you need that environment, and that environment sort of success breeds success. And if you're talking to people, if you can help them, direct them, and at the same time you feel inspired, it's a great place to be. Yeah.
So where did you start, Richard? How did you begin?
I started networking back in 2004.
Okay.
It was just after I set up my business, and I think I went to a Chamber of Commerce event.
Right.
That was my first thing. I think I got an invite somehow, and I thought, I'll go along and check it out. And it was there that I met Paul Webb, who introduced me into BNI. Great guy, Paul, very well networked. And at the time, he was running several BNI chapters, and I went along to that. And that was really when I got into networking. I think BNI does give you some great training. If you're new to networking, it gives you an idea of how to do it. Things like that.
So 2004, obviously you're quite a lot younger than myself. But how old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
2004, I was, I've got to think about that now, 31.
Yes.
31.
That's, well, hats off to you.
Yeah. So it was, and so I started that with BNI, and that was how I met Adrian.
Yeah.
We met through that, and got into networking, started going to other events as well. I think I did about a year and a half in BNI, and then I decided it was time to move on and do something else. And I've kind of done lots of different networking since then. I really like St. Paul's Club. I'm the president of it
of course.
this year. Very proud to be that.
Yeah.
Very proud to be the president. But with that, it's like the complete opposite of BNI. So BNI is very formal, structured, and it's about making relationships and sales. St. Paul's is the complete opposite. It's a community group, and it's like-minded people coming together for lunch. Traditionally, you wouldn't take business over the table. There's things like that, and it's a good way to make friends. And I've done lots of networking things. There's some like great networking lunches out there that I've done in the past, and I often find nowadays I like to do awards dinners and things like that. But I find those black tie events or the formal things great because you get to meet people you might not meet at BNI. So they tend to be MDs, CEOs of bigger businesses, and especially if you go to like an event where the speaker is something that really appeals to them. Whereas you'll find with some of your BNIs, they can be a bit smaller businesses and might not be enough.
I want to drill down, if I can, into something which you've alluded to, Richard, which is kind of the distinction between what I call informal networks, which are, you talked about St. Paul's Club, of which I'm also have the privilege of being a member, and that's a group that I would call an informal network. It's not a group that's specifically there to bring businesses together, but you get to know people, to trust people, and something might happen as a result of it, a bit like, the golf club or something of that order. And then on the other hand, you've got what I call formal networking, which is, we've alluded to BNI, and I know, Saf, you've had a lot of involvement in setting up networking groups aimed at different people. So let's just talk about the distinction between, a formal business networking group that you probably pay some money to be part of, and the more informal group, because networking isn't new. It's been going on since Adam and Eve were around. It's people getting to know each other and trust each other and see what happens. But do you have a view, Saf, about the merits of either, or if they both got their own plate, informal and formal?
I mean, I'm part of both, and I think a lot of it is about what works for you and what's right and what you're looking to do. I mean, I've been part of BNI, and I found it very difficult for me to maintain consistency, and with BNI it works. I've seen it work. It works for many other people, but I found it very difficult for me in terms of keeping it up, keeping consistent. It became quite difficult for me to maintain that, and I thought, I'm struggling here. And then I looked at what other alternatives are there, and sometimes, at the time for me, it was Federation of Small Businesses. There was an opportunity there. There was the local chamber, the Chamber of Commerce, and then we also looked at ourselves in terms of, can we create our own sort of community, and we came up with Pathway to Grow back in 2000. We had the idea in 2011, created that in 2012, and that was, again, very informal. There was no membership, there's no sign-up process. It revolved around a keynote speaker. So, we have this tagline: network, learn and grow. And, you learn through meeting other people. You learn because you're in the audience of, hopefully, a keynote speaker that has a story to tell. And you're on a journey of lifelong learning. So Pathway to Grow was our thing. And then what we thought was that, actually, we need to sort of segregate and classify and give people differentiation. Some people want to network over sort of a dinner, informal bar tea. So we have Chutney and Chat, which we've been running. We also wanted to do daytime, which wasn't there. So we had this coffee and Natter, which was an afternoon event. We have a breakfast event. There's a lot of breakfast networking events. So we had a slight differentiation, Cedar Network that we created, and then a ladies event called Samosa Saturday. So these are all part of the Pathway to Grow family, and some have really taken off, and others we've had a bit of hit and miss in terms of consistency. So in that respect, it's a community that we have. We had to change, like everybody else. So we went online last year. and try to keep that going. We've got WhatsApp groups, so the community is there supporting each other. Sometimes you might get a message to say, "Do you know any plumber out there?" Or do you know not necessarily work related. It could be just contacts. Do you know somebody who can do photography for a wedding? Do you know somebody who can hire cars and so forth? And it's just a matter of referrals because it's a trusted community. So from my perspective, I want to be part of different communities. I'm obviously striving to be part of St. Paul's, but also we're part of we're part of the chamber. We're members of that, but also our industry as well. So I'm part of something called the Association of Employment Learning Providers, ELP. We're also part of different sort of sector based. So I've become a member of URSA. So this is the employment getting people back into employment. It's a confederation of employability professionals, and at the same time we're creating other communities. So BAME Apprentice Network. So people who are who are apprentices from a BAME background that want to sort of support each other. Degree Apprentice Network is another one. So it's a segmentation, and it's like not all apprentices are the same, so you can't have a catch-all. So Degree Apprentice Network is, again, people who are doing degrees and apprentices. They've got more things in common, and they'll come together. And because they've got that one thing in common, and then they'll grow.
Just for the benefit of those who don't know, I imagine many do, but what's the acronym BAME stand for?
So this is sorry, I keep waiting. We sometimes assume that everybody again. I know we've got individuals that are from different sectors, and also people outside the UK as well. So that's Black, Asian, minority, ethnics, and that's a catch-all really for community. So
Richard, Saf's given us so much to go at there, but I want also to just we've made various allusions to St. Paul's Club, and there just might be some people out there who are thinking, well, what's that? Is that a church or what? And there's nobody better. There is nobody better to tell us about what St. Paul's Club is than the president of St. Paul's Club.
Yes.
And the president of St. Paul's Club at the time of this recording is no other than Dr Richard Fallon. So what is St. Paul's Club, Richard?
So St. Paul's Club is the oldest private members club in Birmingham. It was established back in 1859, and it was brought about by a group of jewellers in the jewellery quarter in Birmingham who'd had enough of having bad lunches or poor service, and they decided to set up their own club. So it's set up as a lunch club where people go as an oasis, as a way to get away from work. And the whole idea was you could come for a lunch. At the time, I think there was lunches every day, and it'd always be arrive from 12:30, sit down at 1, and lunch would be done at 2. And the club's got some amazing traditions, like it always used to be carving at the table, so the joint meat get carved at the table. And we have the legendary Warsaw sauce, which Adrian will know all about, which is when you have the rice pudding in. The rice pudding is one of the desserts choices is always rice pudding. And what happened with the members were told, look, you can have like beer, you can have wine on the table, but you can't have any spirits. Now, with all these rules, people always look for ways to get around it. And somebody very cleverly found, I don't know how, they found out that a cat full of gin goes phenomenally well in rice pudding. Really well. So obviously now this was no longer a spirit, it was a condiment. And because the gin at the time came from Warsaw, it became known as Warsaw sauce. And I can highly recommend it. If you ever have rice pudding, try a cat full of gin in it. It's really nice. But yeah, the whole idea of St. Paul's Club was just that nice community where like-minded business people could come, have a lunchtime, get away from work, and have some good companionship, and get away from it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard, tell us a little bit about some of the networking groups that you're involved with at the moment, and in particular, the supply chain.
Yes, so the technology supply chain was something I set up a few years ago now. It's been going since, formally since 2019 when we became registered, but it has been going since 2018. And how that came about was I was doing marketing, and my PhD group had a reunion in 2016. And they said to me, we could actually do with some help because we got lots of funding and grants, but we can't can't attract in the businesses to get them to understand how we can help. So they said, can you help a similar course? You know, I do marketing now, my PhD's from here. And that went really well. And what came from that was we decided that actually there was loads of these funds out there, loads of these grants that nobody knew about. So we kind of thought, what we need to do is connect people in a way, and we want to connect people to each other. So we started doing events at St. Paul's Club, the old building when we had that, and we'd have 60 odd people there, and we'd tell them what was on offer. We'd have a good keynote speaker, and people would come and network. And that's a no-cost membership. People enjoy it. And it's funny. It's funny because we had some people from university, and there's about 4 of them came to one of our events, Adrian, and they said to me at the end, they said, and all 3 of them came up to me, all independent, said, every here's like really nice, and they're really surprised. There's like this thing, how is it everybody's really nice here? And it's because I think the way we do things, it's loud, lively, it's friendly. If you're not that type of person, they don't tend to come back. So we've ended up with a group of really nice people who really like innovation and really like doing stuff. So that's something it's a good group. We meet monthly. We've got a briefing. It'll be good to get back to meeting physically, as opposed to doing everything online, which we have been doing. And also run a little group that's been going since 2016, actually, where we meet once a month for breakfast, and we just kind of like find out what's going on, see if we can refer business. Because as we said, it's always about relationships, isn't it? You do business with people you know, like and trust, and it's a good way of doing it. But I still like to do, I'm going to be getting back to the Chamber, Black Country Chamber of Commerce, going to their events, because I really like that. I'm also going to have a look at the FSB as well, actually. I think that would probably be good.
One of the themes that I think is coming out from the conversations that we've had is that, networking is not a case of one size fits all. That some people are better suited to different kind of networks than others. And Saf, I know that this is something that you recognise when you set up the Coffee and Natter, the group, because I think you recognised at that point, and that there are some people who are not like Richard, gregarious and highly articulate, and people who are quite.
It's not a Troy Simon, is he, Richard?
But the point.
I'm well known for being shy and retiring, Sam.
The point I'm making is that there are some people who perhaps find it quite difficult, and that was one of the reasons why I think you set up that group. Is that not right?
Absolutely. So, we thought, networking isn't just about extroverts getting together and selling to each other. And what we thought was there's a way that if we can get people in around a keynote speaker where they don't have to necessarily get up and say something, because public speaking is probably one of the biggest things, and probably is the most frightening thing out there for people. Not everybody's used to that. And people get worried, the fact that they're going to be asked to say something, even asked to introduce themselves. So if you're in a group and you're having to say, my name is XYZ, or some sort of elevator pitch, that'll frighten the daylights out of people. And because of that, just that, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute that they've got to introduce themselves, they won't go. And they won't attend. So, we said, okay, Coffee and Natter, some of our events, you don't have to actually introduce yourself. You can do one-to-ones, because some people are actually very good at one-to-ones and have conversations, but they don't want to be highlighted or say something. So our Coffee and Natter was specifically saying, if you want to say something, fantastic, you can. If you don't, there's no reason, and we're not going to go around the room saying, do you want to say something and so forth. So so if you wish to, you come to the front of the room, say your bit, and then you've got a minute, and then the next person, and it was an open room and open forum in that respect. So that's what really worked for us in terms of that, and we sort of looked at that, and that was myself really for a while, because I was nervous in terms of doing that 30 seconds or elevator, and I used to practice that and say, this is how I'm going to say it and so forth. And you're always nervous, so that was something that I'm proud of, and it's worked for us. But what's happened since then is that people are getting a little bit more used to it, and you've got videos now that sort of teach you how to do things and so forth. So it's sort of changed now. What we find is that more and more people want to go out and have their 30 seconds, or have their quick pitch to say, this is who I am, this is what we do, and this is how I can help you.
I think that one of the things that we wouldn't want to do is miss the opportunity to sort of pick brains and expertise. And I want to just ask both of you for some sort of thoughts in terms of, some of the basic do's and don'ts, some of the basic tips when you're looking to network in terms of, some people say you go through the list and you decide who you want to meet. Some people say you shouldn't do that. Just some basic do's and don'ts, Richard, and some of the things that you've seen that have made you cringe over the years.
Sure. So one thing, and this great piece of advice got from Neil Liddell. He always said, when you go networking, always go to meet 6 new people and have a proper conversation. So if I go, I'd always look for that. I wouldn't really go through the list because to find who I want to meet, because usually that means I want to sell to that person, and that's not what really networking's about. One of the things I find is you must know what your USP is. If you do so, Saf, can you tell us what is a USP?
Unique selling point, isn't it? Or
Okay.
is that different?
Yeah, no, you're right.
I fell in the trap.
It's a unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you invited him there, Saf.
Yeah.
I thought that's me. That's you go.
Yeah, it's a unique selling proposition, and this idea came about from a guy called Ross and Reeves. What a great name! From a book in 1961 called Reality in Advertising. And Ross and Reeves was the man behind the Minstrels line, chocolate melts in your mouth, not in your hand. He developed that, and he said, because most people think a USP is just something that's unique. It's not. It needs 3 things. What Ross and Reeves says is, 1, it has to promise a specific benefit. So you've got to say, if you buy my product or service, this is what you're going to get. Number 2, he said, it's got to be unique. But when he said unique, he said something your competitors do not or cannot offer. So it's got to be something like that. So you don't compete with everybody in the world. It's just whoever your competitors are, it's got to be unique. And the third one is it's got to attract the mass millions. Now, nobody here is looking for mass millions, but it's got to be attractive to people. So one of the things I often find when I was networking at the time, I'd meet a lot of accountants.
Yeah.
And accountants would always say, well, what's your USP? And they'd always say, well, we do a great job and we're friendly. And I always like to reply to that, well, one, that obviously isn't unique because they all said it. But I always like to reply to that by saying, that's a real shame. I like my accountants to be incompetent and openly hostile to me. because it's the bare minimum you expect from anybody. Is they can do the job and they're going to be friendly to you. That is real bare minimum stuff. So it's kind of getting people to have a think. What hits those 3 things? So you need to really work on that. You really work on that USP and get something out of that. What I like to do is when I network, I always boil down what I do, try and do to 1 sentence, and if I can get the idea of 3 in there, it works. So for the technology supply chain, I say the technology supply chain is a no-cost membership which helps manufacturing, engineering and tech companies to grow by connecting with the grants, fully funded support and the opportunities available to them. Wow. So that is 1 sentence, but it gives everything. Because what I find is most people, if you don't do what if you're a competitor, because it's weird, you always end up talking to your competitors, don't you, in networking events? It's like whatever you do, you always end up talking to it's exactly the same thing. People stop listening, and I think that's. I mean, when I've done in our group, we don't do 60 seconds, we do 10 seconds. Okay. Because I said that's long enough to know. Do I want to speak to you or not? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's long enough to say, here's where I am, here's what I do. Wow. Do we have a chat? Because you can't sell. All you can do is look to set up a one-to-one, as you said. A lot of people are good at that, and you think, actually, I need to have a chat with you.
Wow. Brevity is the king, isn't it?
I mean, one of the things that you've talked about, Saf, in conversations that we've had, is baloney. And I think what you're talking about there is, credibility. And so just tell us your thoughts in terms of what you mean about avoiding baloney, and what sort of thing do you look for from somebody who's doing it right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making reference to one of my Canny bites, which is bravado is baloney. And what I was referring to there is that when people come in and sort of have this PR machine on, that we're doing this, we're working with these international brands and so forth, and they're not necessarily looking at who they're talking to. So if I'm in a room with SME businesses and I'm saying, well, I'm actually servicing these international companies and I'm international and I've got offices in Dubai and so forth, or whatever, you're in a way alienating the audience, and you're not building that sort of relationship. And from my perspective, it's it becomes a PR machine, and you're just going out there and sort of, finding out. A bugbear for me is that when people say, well, actually, I'm looking for high net worth individuals. If you're looking for a certain industry, for example, if I'm looking to work with accountants because I've got an offer, that's fantastic, because you know who your clients are. But if you're looking for high net worth individuals, then you're closed-minded, because what you're saying is, I'm not going to talk to you because you're potentially not a high net worth individual. And you're really segmenting, I think, in the wrong way. You've got to be a little bit open-minded. You've got to be in a position where it's not necessarily even about the person, but it's maybe the network that they've got, and the fact that they may think of you in terms of helping somebody else, to say, you know what, I know just the person to talk to. Richard is the guy. He's your marketing engineer. He can help you in terms of that business because we've got a connection. So it may not be the fact that I'm a customer for Richard, but I could well be a referral partner. And it doesn't have to be a referral partner in terms of a formal relationship. It's just the fact that I want to help that individual. And for me, it's that biggest thing in terms of people do actually want to help. And it's really being able to stay in that person's mind when they're thinking about, when they're trying to solve a problem, to say, yeah, he's the man, or she's the go-to lady for this, or whatever the case is. You want to be that go-to person for whatever your niche is, or whatever your USP is. So that's my sort of take on it, really.
And isn't it also about there are other benefits to being a part of a network, not just in terms of the potential to win work, which obviously is part of it, but it's also the ability to share experiences, to sometimes have a shoulder to cry on. Would you both agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think networking there is definitely a thing about, selling, and there's definitely a thing about cutting costs. But I think it's really important that you meet other business owners, because I found when I started off in business, all of my friends still work for corporates. None of my family run a business, so they don't understand the stress and pressures. So it's good to meet other business owners going through the same learning you have. And I think that's really important, is you can actually you end up with a bit of a support network as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the right phrase. It's a support network. Sometimes you're close to the nearest in terms of family members and so forth. You've got nothing in common, and it's you can talk to them in terms of some of the issues, but they can't relate to it the way that somebody else who's been there, who's done it, who's in the same sector, who understands business, or understands the journey of entrepreneurship. It's a very tough sector, a very lonely place, regardless of what you're trying to achieve. But it's a very tough sector, and if you can work with other entrepreneurs, work with other business owners, you've got that support mechanism. And what you find is that if you've got a problem, somebody else has already been there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it just helps you on that journey. And sometimes we don't have enough people enough people that we can go to, that we can comfortably speak to without feeling threatened. And I think it's that element of really sharing your vulnerability and concern. And sometimes, it's finding those people that you can talk to.
I want to finish by talking briefly about the future of networking, because it has changed. It's not just about getting together in a room face to face. Obviously, social media plays a part in it. LinkedIn is a network. The situation that we've had over the COVID years have meant that, as Richard alluded to, that the face-to-face groups haven't been possible in many cases. So people are getting together in other ways. So, I mean, do you think that how do you think networking will go in the next 5 years, and do you think that technology will play a bigger part, or do you think at the end of the day people are still going to want to look each other in the eye in the same room?
It's a really good question. I think, oddly enough, formal networking, when you've got a B&I or a business over breakfast, something like that, works well on Zoom. because it's very structured, it's very rigid. I've been to plenty of events now where there'll be a conference and they try and do the informal networking where you meet people and you get 2 minutes. It doesn't really work, and I think that's largely because you need to be able to see people as you read from body cues and body language, and I think it's much harder that way. I think networking has got to be an individual thing where you meet people. Once you know them and all of that, or like a BNI where it's very formal, that's fine. But I think otherwise, people want to meet people and you want to have a chat with somebody. So I was fine with LinkedIn as well. I think it's often used in the incorrect way, because you'll connect with somebody who suddenly starts bombarding with sales messages. And they won't ask about you at all. It's all like, I'm trying to sell you this. And you think generally at networking, people know not to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Is they don't hard sell you. What I find really odd is when they keep messaging you even though you've not replied. It's kind of like if I was stood there next to you, you wouldn't kind of keep talking to me if you'd asked me something I hadn't replied to it. So it's kind of having that conversation. I mean, I always remember one of my worst networking experiences was oddly enough at a chamber event where I was actually, there was a gentleman there I met. He asked me what I did and I gave him the one sentence. And then he then proceeded to tell me for at least, it felt like forever, but it's probably 5-10 minutes on photography. He was a photographer and how it could benefit my business. And it was just hard sellers in the corner, pinned down like this. It's like relentless. So since that day, I've become a network rescuer. So if you're on the call, I'd like you to be a network rescuer. If you ever see somebody pinned in the corner, if they've got a badge on, look at the badge and just go up and say, "Hi, Adrian," or whoever the name is. Read the badge and say, "Can we have that chat now?" And then pull them away. I honestly, please be a network rescuer. And you feel for some people who just said, you've just got cornered and somebody's just pitching at you and it's not networking.
Absolutely.
Saf?
I mean, I think for me, my take is there's going to be more and more of it. You've got groups within subgroups. You've got private dining is something that we picked up on in terms of our organisation. So we've created this quantum club where we get people together. I'm doing it as an opportunity to meet new people, and at the same time, for those individuals, they're meeting others. So that's one form for us. It's a way of marketing. So rather than having so as our organisation pathway, we don't we can either look at how do we grow our business, and what we want to do is build that relationship. So from a high level perspective, I want to add value. So I want to give first, and I want to try and bring value to the table. Bring people in, not necessarily about pitching ourselves to them, but it's more about them being in an environment where they're also enjoying themselves, they're gaining, and at the same time, they may in the future think, you know what, if you need support of these organizations, I'll put you in touch. That's the way we're growing our business in terms of that element of it. We're also working on sort of mastermind type groups as well, which again is actually trying to come together in a bit of a formal setting, but actually supporting each other to grow your business. So this is, we're calling it D2D, direct to director. So that's something that we're doing. So what you're finding is that, networking per se, in terms of just having random people in a room, there's less and less of that. And what people want to, there's a lot of people wanting your attention, and you've got a lot more opportunities now. And it's really understanding what works for you, what you enjoy doing, and what clubs or associations or groups you feel part of. Hybrid is also, I think, a way. So wherever possible, we will look at now possibly creating an app or a Facebook group or maybe a LinkedIn group that works with that. As I said, we've got a WhatsApp group that works for our PTG community that's really flourishing. We've got our Facebook groups as well. And it's a combination of those things. But there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of groups out there. There's a lot of networking out there. Just as there's events out there, you wouldn't necessarily go to every single event. If you could, we could go on to an event right now, and there'll be 10 awards dinners in Birmingham. There'll be so many others, and they're probably not on your radar. You wouldn't necessarily go with that. It's about the community that you're part of, what you feel that works for you, and what tickles your fancy in some aspects of it. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. At one point, this was a good few years ago now, I was doing 3 networking events a week, and it was just too much, because the thing is you think you've got to follow up with people you meet, you need to have one-to-ones. So suddenly you think, and I've got to work at some point as well. I've actually got to do some real work. So you're right. I think there is a thing on being careful of where you go to. I always think it's where you feel comfortable and relaxed as well. So I think there's various like BNI groups or chapters. Some you'll feel great in, you think actually fitting in, and some you don't. Equally, I think it's like any event you go to, isn't it? Sometimes you think, I really like it, this is great, and sometimes it's not. And as you said, if you get something industry focused where you can meet the right type of people, fantastic.
So much knowledge and experience, although, as we said at the beginning, we started very young, Richard and I. The clock has beaten us, always does, unfortunately. So it's now the time when we have to curtail this canny conversation with a cause. I'm sure that there are questions, and feedback is something that which we value enormously. We hope that people will subscribe to this podcast, and we hope that they'll like it. And I think Saf and I would both like to finish by saying a huge thank you to Richard, a very busy man. And he has waited quite a long time to talk to us on this particular occasion, for reasons which we won't go into. In fact, he's been incredibly kind and tolerant, and that's how he is. So thank you, Richard, and to our listeners, goodbye until next time.